Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving right into a truly wild story about how a single, off-the-cuff courtroom comment accidentally sparked one of India's most massive and, frankly, unusual youth protest movements in recent history. We're going to unpack exactly how this happened and why understanding this movement is absolutely vital for anyone keeping an eye on the future of global politics. So, let's start with the literal spark. On May 15, 2026, India's Chief Justice made this specific remark during a Supreme Court hearing. Now, as a quick aside, he did later clarify that he was talking specifically about individuals with fake degrees, but you know how the internet works. The quote had already gone completely viral, entirely stripped of its original context. By just uttering those words, he inadvertently set off a massive, nationwide chain reaction. And what's genuinely fascinating here is how the youth completely flipped the script. Instead of just getting angry and letting it fade away, they turned what felt like a heavy-handed insult into this incredibly powerful engine for political mobilization. They took a word that was meant to diminish them and weaponized it.
Which brings us to Section 1, From Insult to Identity, Reclaiming the Cockroach.
Rather than running from the term, these young Indians decided to just embrace it. They used it to build a shared, defiant political identity that literally anyone could join. The movement was launched by a 30-year-old named Abhijeet Dipke, and they adopted the satirical name Cockroach Janta Party. It's this brilliant, irreverent wordplay on the ruling Bharatiya Janta Party. Translating roughly to the Cockroach People's Party, it gave millions of frustrated kids a hilarious but deeply pointed banner to rally behind, directly parroting the nation's most powerful political establishment. Section 2, Why the Cockroach Resonated, the Dry Tinder of Youth Grievances. You see, the viral success of the CJP wasn't just because it was a catchy joke. It tapped into some incredibly deep underlying systemic frustrations. It was basically a match thrown onto the dry tinder of youth grievances. Millions of young people were already grappling with this really harsh reality. We're talking stubborn high youth unemployment, an education system that's been plagued by repeated competitive exam paper leaks, a severe lack of quality jobs, and on top of all that, a rising cost of living. Imagine doing everything society asked of you, studying, taking the exams, waiting for jobs, and still feeling completely shut out. This quote from Al Jazeera really hits the nail on the head. For these youths, the cockroach became the perfect symbol of their blocked aspirations. But it also symbolized their resilience, right? Because like a cockroach, they're surviving in a system that they feel ignores them, treats them as entirely dispensable, and forces them to live in the cracks of society. And that shared frustration, it spread like wildfire online. Just look at this number for a second, 20 million. The CJP rapidly gained millions of followers, crossing 20 million on Instagram, actually blowing past the ruling party's own follower count in just a matter of days. Almost overnight, the cockroach emoji became a literal badge of solidarity across social media bios everywhere. Section 3, Memes Hit the Streets. The movement escalates. Because what started out as an online faceless meme evolved incredibly fast into highly organized, real-world political action. The timeline is just wild. We go from those mid-May courtroom remarks to a viral online launch in late May, and bam, by June, thousands are physically camping out at Delhi's Jantar Mantar. And by July 20th, this movement had organized a massive march on Parliament that ended up in clashes with the police. And what's truly amazing is how they brought that irreverent, meme-driven energy straight to the streets. They actually mailed signed diapers to the education minister. The message, use these to help plug the exam leaks. I mean, it's a literal masterclass in blending comedy with biting political critique to keep the public's attention locked in. But it wasn't all just theatrical satire. The gravity of the situation became undeniably clear when prominent activist Sonam Wangchuk joined the youth. He launched a hunger strike where he lost 18 pounds in 18 days, right before being dragged into an ambulance by plainclothes police. This number, 18, is a really stark reminder of the physical toll and the absolute seriousness operating beneath the movement's surface. Section 4, Demanding Systemic Change, the Coherent Policies Behind the Satire. So despite the comedic, meme-heavy exterior, the Cockroach Janta Party is actually pushing for a highly coherent set of institutional demands. They aren't just angry, they're incredibly organized. They're taking direct aim at exam integrity, demanding strict liability and independent oversight. They want to curtail judicial executive revolving doors, expand women's political representation to 50% in parliament, strengthen anti-defection norms, and regulate partisan media. This is a highly structured political manifesto operating right behind a joke. Now, how has the state reacted? The government and the ruling BJP have taken a pretty hardline stance. They've portrayed the movement as a national security threat, with politicians labeling the demonstrators as villains looking to divide the country. And this rhetoric escalated into physical clashes as police cracked down on that July march to Parliament, with the government even moving to ask platforms to block the CJP's online accounts.
Section 5. Why this movement matters. A new template for youth engagement.
So regardless of where you stand politically, observing this phenomenon is vital for understanding modern mobilization. This quote from Global Voices really sums it up. This movement matters deeply because it represents a monumental shift among Indian youth. They've successfully taken these scattered, individualized complaints like, my exam leaked or I can't find a job, and transformed them into a unified collective claim for sweeping systemic change. They reframed an individual feeling of failure into an institutional failure. So as we wrap up this explainer, we're left looking at the big picture with one critical question. Will this meme-driven, satirical mobilization just fracture and fade under intense state pressure and internet throttling? Or are we looking at the new, permanent blueprint for political action in the digital age? It's a massive question, and it's one that anyone watching the future of global democracy needs to be paying very, very close attention to.